They sold her for half price. The crowd stayed silent until a lone cowboy spoke up. For most people, this market was just another stop in their hard lives. For her, it was something much darker. She stood near a wooden post at the edge of the crowd. Her hands were still, her eyes lowered. She tried not to draw attention, yet she could feel every look falling on her like weight. She wore a simple dress, worn and faded from many washes. Her shoes were old, covered in dust, just like the rest of her. She looked smaller than her age, not because she was weak, but because she had learned to make herself invisible when the world felt unsafe. Two men stood close by, speaking loudly. They talked as if she were not there, as if she could not hear every word. They discussed numbers, shook their heads, and laughed without humor. One of them complained that times were hard and money was scarce. The other nodded and said they would have to lower the price. He said it like he was talking about a broken tool or an old animal, something that had lost its value. A few people stopped to watch. Some were curious, others bored. A man with folded arms leaned against a cart. A woman holding a basket slowed her steps but did not stop. A group of young boys whispered to each other before being pulled away. No one said anything. No one asked her name. She felt the moment stretch. Each second felt longer than the last. She tried to keep her face calm, but inside, fear pressed hard against her chest. She had learned not to cry in public. Tears only made things worse. They made people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people turned away faster. This was not how her life was supposed to be. She remembered a different time, a quieter time. A small home with cracked walls but warm evenings. A place where her name was spoken kindly. Those memories felt far away now, like they belonged to someone else. The man speaking raised his voice. He said that no one seemed interested, that maybe she was not worth what they first asked. He shrugged and announced a lower price. His tone was flat, careless. A few people in the crowd reacted with small sounds, some surprise, some approval. Still, no one stepped forward. The silence was heavy. It wrapped around her tighter than rope. She felt it settle in the space between breaths, between heartbeats. She wondered if this silence was worse than shouting. At least shouting showed that someone cared enough to react. This silence felt like agreement. She stared at the ground, watching dust move with the wind. She counted small stones near her feet to keep her mind from breaking. 1, 2, 3. Anything to stay present without falling apart. A man nearby shook his head and muttered something about bad luck. Another laughed and said the world was getting crueler by the day. They spoke as observers, not participants, as if this moment had nothing to do with them. As if they were safe from ever standing where she stood. The price was lowered again. This time, there was a faint reaction. A few people leaned forward. Someone whispered that it was cheap now. Another said it was a good deal. Their words drifted through the air like smoke. She felt each one settle on her skin, cold and heavy. Her heart pounded. She wondered if this was the moment her future would be decided by strangers who would forget her face by the next day. She wondered if anyone would remember that she was once someone's daughter, someone who laughed easily, someone who dreamed of simple things like peace and safety. The men selling her grew impatient. One tapped his foot. The other waved his hand at the crowd, urging them to decide. He joked that he could not stand there all day. He joked that he had better things to do. The joke landed poorly, but it landed. A few people smiled, most stayed quiet. She closed her eyes for a brief second. In that moment she did not pray for rescue, she prayed for strength. Strength to survive whatever came next. Strength to hold on to herself when everything else was taken away. The market noise continued around her. Somewhere an animal cried out. Somewhere else coins clinked. Life went on, uncaring and steady. That was the hardest part to accept, that the world did not stop for moments like this. A man near the front looked at her face carefully, then looked away. His eyes showed discomfort, but his feet did not move. Another person stepped closer, then changed their mind and stepped back. Fear, habit, and comfort kept everyone exactly where they were. The price was cut again, half of what it had been at the start. This time the seller announced it loudly, almost proudly. He said it was a rare chance. He said people should not complain later that they missed it. His words echoed across the open space. A strange stillness followed. Even the small sounds seemed to fade. The crowd was larger now, drawn by the lowered price and the tension in the air. More eyes watched. Still no voices rose. She felt a deep, quiet pain settle inside her. Not sharp, not loud, just a steady ache. It was the pain of realizing how easily people could watch without acting, how quickly humanity could be traded for convenience. She lifted her eyes for the first time and looked at the crowd. Not with anger, not with blame, just with a quiet question. Her gaze moved from face to face, searching for something she could not name. Maybe courage, maybe kindness, maybe a sign that she was still seen. Most people looked away when her eyes met theirs. One woman met her gaze for a moment. Their eyes connected. In that brief second, there was understanding. But the woman's face tightened, and she turned away, pulling her shawl closer as if to protect herself from the cold of responsibility. The men spoke again, discussing how low they could go without losing face. They argued softly, annoyed more by the slow sale than by the human cost. One suggested that desperation required sacrifice. The other agreed. She felt her shoulders slump, not because she had given up, but because her body was tired of holding itself upright against so much weight. She shifted her stance slightly, feeling the rough ground under her feet. The crowd murmured. Some people justified their silence by telling themselves it was not their place. Others convinced themselves that someone else would step in. Many simply accepted the moment as normal, as part of the way things were done. This acceptance was louder than any shout. She thought about running. The idea flickered through her mind like a spark. But where would she go? She knew the answer. There was nowhere that felt safe anymore. The market was open, but the world felt closed. The seller cleared his throat and announced the price one last time. His voice carried across the space, confident and final. He waited, arms crossed, expecting a response. Seconds passed. In those seconds, she felt the full weight of being alone in a crowd. She understood in a way she never had before that silence could be a choice, and that choices had consequences. No one moved. The sun beat down, unforgiving, dust settled on her dress. The moment stretched thin, ready to break. And then from somewhere beyond the tight circle of watchers, a new sound approached. Slow footsteps, steady, different from the restless shifting of the crowd. She did not turn yet. She did not dare hope. But something in the air changed just slightly. As if the silence had been disturbed not by noise but by intention. The crowd remained unaware that everything was about to change. The crowd slowly shifted, like a restless shadow around her. People adjusted their stance, cleared their throats, whispered small comments, and then fell silent again. It felt as if everyone was waiting for someone else to act. Each person seemed convinced that responsibility belonged to another pair of hands. She stood still, listening. Every sound felt louder now. The soft scrape of boots against dry ground, the faint cough of an old man, the rustle of cloth as someone turned away. These small noises filled the space where words should have been. The men near her continued to speak in low voices. One complained that the day was being wasted. The other said that if people wanted bargains, they should act faster. Their focus was on time and money, not on her. She could have been invisible to them if not for the fact that she was the reason they were standing there. She tried to steady her breathing, in and out, slow and quiet. Panic was dangerous. She had learned that earlier in life. Panic made the mind cloudy. She needed clarity even if it brought pain with it. Her thoughts drifted backward, pulled by memories she had tried to bury. She remembered a time when her life was simple, not easy but understandable. She remembered waking up early to help with daily chores, feeling tired but useful. She remembered voices calling her by name, voices that knew her, voices that cared if she was hurt or afraid. Those memories felt like scenes from another lifetime. She remembered the moment things began to change. It did not happen all at once. It was slow, like a crack spreading through a wall, a promise made and then broken, trust placed in the wrong hands. Each step felt small at the time, harmless even. Looking back now, she could see how each step had led her here. Someone in the crowd laughed quietly. Not at her, not exactly, but at something said nearby. Still, the sound cut deep. It reminded her how easily pain could become background noise to others. A man stepped forward, looked her over quickly, and then shook his head. He muttered that she looked tired, that she might be trouble. He stepped back into the crowd without another glance. No one challenged his words. She wondered what they saw when they looked at her. Did they see a person who had been wronged, or did they see a problem they did not want to carry? She suspected it was the second. The sellers noticed the hesitation. One of them sighed loudly as if offended. He raised his voice again, repeating the lowered price. He spoke faster this time, trying to create urgency. He said opportunities like this did not last long. The words washed over her. She had stopped listening to the details. Numbers no longer meant anything. What mattered was the feeling growing inside her, the feeling that she was being erased, piece, by indifference. She shifted her weight slightly. Her legs were sore from standing. Her body ached in quiet ways she had learned to ignore. Pain had become familiar. What frightened her more was the numbness creeping in. Numbness made it easier for the world to do whatever it wanted. Around her, people continued to justify their silence in their own minds. Some told themselves it was none of their business. Others believed that interfering would bring trouble. A few convinced themselves that this was simply how things worked here, and fighting it would change nothing. The crowd was full of reasons. None of them helped her. A woman holding a child paused nearby. The child stared openly, curious and unafraid. The woman quickly turned the child's head away, whispering something under her breath. She did not look back. That small action hurt more than words could. It told her that she was something to be hidden, something not meant to be seen by innocent eyes. Her chest tightened. She wanted to speak. She wanted to say something, anything, that would remind them she was human. But her voice felt trapped. Years of being told to stay quiet had done their work. Silence had been taught to her as a form of survival. She swallowed hard and looked down again. The sellers argued briefly among themselves. One suggested lowering the price again just to be done with it. The other hesitated, worried about looking weak. Their concern was not about right or wrong, only about pride. The price dropped once more. A ripple moved through the crowd. More murmurs, more interest, still no action. She felt smaller than ever. It was not just her body, it was her presence. The longer she stood there, the more she felt herself fading in the eyes of others. She was becoming an idea instead of a person. Her mind returned to the moment she lost control of her own path. She remembered asking for help and being told to wait. She remembered waiting until waiting turned into forgetting. Each door that closed had led her closer to this place. She wondered if anyone in the crowd had ever been abandoned. If they knew what it felt like to realize that help was not coming, no matter how long you stood still. A man near the back crossed his arms and shook his head slowly. His face showed discomfort, even anger. For a moment, hope flickered in her chest. But then he turned away, pushing through the crowd, choosing distance over involvement. That flicker died quickly. The sellers noticed the growing crowd and mistook it for success. One of them smiled, thinking pressure would finally force a decision. He spoke louder, his voice sharp with impatience. She felt exposed, like standing under a harsh light while everyone else stayed safely in shadow. Her hands trembled slightly. She clenched them into fists, pressing her nails into her palms. The small pain grounded her. It reminded her that she was still real even if others acted as if she were not. The market continued around them. Deals were made a few steps away. Laughter rose and fell. Life moved forward without pause. This moment, so heavy for her, was just another scene for everyone else. She looked up again, scanning the crowd. Faces blurred together. Some showed curiosity. Some showed judgment. Some showed nothing at all. She searched for a sign, any sign that someone might step out of line. Nothing came. The weight of the silence pressed harder. It was no longer just the absence of sound. It was a shared agreement to look away. That realization hurt more than fear. It made her feel invisible. She thought about the future she might face if no one spoke. It was not a clear image, just a dark shape filled with uncertainty. The unknown scared her, but what scared her more was how normal this moment felt to everyone else. The sellers grew tired of waiting. One of them said this was the lowest they would go. He sounded annoyed, like someone being inconvenienced by a stubborn object. He tapped his fingers against his arm, waiting for someone to respond. The crowd waited too. Seconds stretched into long moments. The air felt thick. Even breathing seemed loud. She felt a strange calm settle over her. It was not peace. It was resignation. A quiet acceptance that she might not be saved by anyone else. If this was the end of her choices, she would at least face it standing. She straightened her back slightly, lifted her chin just enough. It was a small act, but it was hers. A few people noticed. Their expressions shifted just a little, but still no one moved. The sellers noticed too. One frowned, unsure why this small gesture unsettled him. He dismissed the feeling quickly and focused back on the crowd. The silence continued, heavy and unbroken. Then somewhere beyond the circle of watchers, a new presence could be felt. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. A rhythm different from the nervous energy around her. Footsteps approached, slow, confident, unhurried. She felt it before she saw it. The air changed, like a held breath finally being released. A few heads turned toward the sound. The sellers paused mid-sentence. The crowd, still unaware of what was about to happen, shifted once more. And for the first time since she had been brought there, the silence did not feel empty. The footsteps grew closer, calm and steady, cutting through the thick silence of the market. People began to turn their heads, one by one, curious about who would walk toward a moment everyone else had tried to avoid. The sound was not rushed, not hesitant. It carried confidence, the kind that comes from someone who has made peace with standing alone. She felt her heart beat faster. She did not know why, but something told her this was different. Still, she kept her eyes lowered. Hope was dangerous. She had learned that hoping too early only made disappointment sharper. The crowd slowly opened as a tall figure moved forward. He wore simple clothes, dusty from travel. His boots were worn, his hat old, shaped by sun and wind. He looked like someone who had spent more time on open roads than in comfortable rooms. His face was marked by years, not just age but experience. His eyes were calm but alert, taking everything in. He stopped a short distance away and looked around before speaking. His gaze moved from the sellers to the crowd, then finally rested on her. He did not stare. He did not judge. His look was steady, respectful, as if he was seeing her clearly for the first time that day. The sellers straightened slightly. One of them frowned, annoyed at the interruption. The other forced a polite smile, ready to repeat the price yet again. Before they could speak, the cowboy raised his hand slightly, not as a command but as a request for a moment. "What's going on here?" he asked. His voice was calm, not loud, but it carried. The crowd quieted even more, surprised that someone had finally asked the obvious question. One of the sellers laughed nervously. He explained quickly, using practiced words, talking about necessity, about circumstances, about how things worked. He avoided looking directly at the woman as he spoke. The cowboy listened without interrupting. He nodded once slowly, as if absorbing every word. Then he asked another question. "And she agrees to this?" he said, glancing toward her again. The seller hesitated. "She doesn't have much choice," he replied, trying to sound reasonable. That answer changed something. The cowboy's expression hardened just a little, not with anger but with clarity. He looked back at the crowd. "So everyone here is fine with that?" he asked. "No choice." The silence returned, but this time it felt different. It was no longer passive. It was exposed. The cowboy stepped closer, placing himself between her and the sellers, not aggressively but firmly. His presence alone caused the sellers to take a small step back. He spoke again, his voice steady. "I've seen hard times," he said. "I've seen people make bad choices because they thought they had no other way. But standing quiet doesn't make it right." That alone made something inside her loosen just a little. One of the sellers tried to regain control. He spoke louder, saying the cowboy did not understand the situation, that he should mind his own business. The cowboy did not raise his voice. "It becomes my business when I'm standing here," he replied. "And when I see someone being treated like they don't matter." For a moment no sound came out, then she shook her head slowly. "No," she said, barely above a whisper. That single word felt heavier than all the noise that had come before. The cowboy nodded as if he had expected that answer. He turned back to the sellers. "You heard her," he said. "This ends now. You don't have authority." A man near the front looked down at his feet. A woman tightened her grip on her basket. Someone at the back shook their head slowly, shame written across their face. The cowboy opened the pouch just enough to show what was inside: money, earned through hard work. "I'll cover what you're asking," he said to the sellers. "And then you walk away." One of them hesitated, calculating. The other nodded quickly, eager to be done, but the cowboy raised a finger. "Not a sale," he said firmly. "A release. You don't belong to anyone," he said quietly. "You're free to decide your next step." The sellers gathered their things quickly, avoiding eye contact as they pushed through the crowd and disappeared. The cowboy remained beside her, not rushing, not leading, just standing there making space. She took a deep breath. For the first time that day, the air felt lighter. Around them, people slowly returned to their own lives, but they were changed. They carried the weight of what they had witnessed and the knowledge that silence had almost won. She looked at the cowboy again. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "You were brave before I ever arrived," he replied. And in that moment she believed him. The market did not return to normal right away. Even after the sellers were gone, a strange stillness lingered in the air. People moved more slowly now, as if unsure how to act after what they had just witnessed. Some avoided looking at her. Others looked with quiet respect. A few glanced at the cowboy, curiosity mixed with something close to admiration. She stood there for a moment, unsure what to do next. For so long, her path had been decided by others that choosing for herself felt unfamiliar. Freedom, she realized, was not just the absence of chains. It was the challenge of deciding where to go when no one was pushing you anymore. The cowboy waited patiently. He did not grab her arm or tell her what to do. He simply stood nearby, giving her space. That alone meant more to her than she could explain. When she finally took a step forward, it felt like learning how to walk again. Her legs were weak, but they held her. She moved away from the post, away from the spot where she had stood in silence for so long. Each step felt small yet powerful. A woman from the crowd approached cautiously. She offered a bottle of water without saying a word. Her hands trembled slightly as she passed it over. The woman's eyes were filled with regret, but also relief. She whispered a quiet apology before stepping back. She accepted the water and nodded. Her throat was dry, and the simple act of drinking grounded her. It reminded her that she was still part of the living world, not just a moment people would forget. More people slowly came closer. No one spoke loudly. A man said that what happened should never have been allowed. Another admitted he should have spoken sooner. Their words did not erase the pain, but they mattered. They showed that the silence had finally cracked. The cowboy watched all of this quietly. He did not seek praise. When someone thanked him, he nodded politely and changed the subject. It was clear he had not acted for attention. He had acted because he could not do otherwise. Eventually, the crowd thinned. Life moved on as it always did. Carts rolled away. Voices faded. Dust settled back onto the ground. But something remained behind, an invisible shift, a reminder that one moment of courage could disturb even the most accepted wrong. She and the cowboy walked away from the center of the market together, not side by side, but close enough that she did not feel alone. They stopped near the edge where the noise was softer. "Where will you go now?" he asked gently. She thought about the question. For the first time, it felt like a real choice. She did not answer right away. She looked at the open road beyond the market, stretching out under the wide sky. "I don't know yet," she said honestly, "but I want to choose." That's a good place to start. The world felt larger than it had that morning, less like a trap and more like a possibility. After some time, they stopped. This was where their paths would separate. He pointed toward a small town not far away, a place where she might find work and people who would treat her fairly. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Just remember today." They parted without drama. He turned back toward his horse and the open land beyond. She watched him go, carrying with him the quiet strength that had changed everything. She continued on her own. The days that followed were not easy. Freedom did not erase fear overnight. She still woke from troubled dreams. She still flinched at raised voices. But each morning she reminded herself that she was moving by choice now. In the small town she found simple work, honest work. It was tiring, but it was hers. The people there did not know her past, and she did not offer it freely. She learned that it was okay to let some chapters remain closed. Slowly, she rebuilt herself, not into who she had been before, but into someone stronger. Someone who knew the cost of silence and the power of one voice. Sometimes she thought about the crowd. She wondered if they remembered her. She hoped they remembered the feeling more than the details, the discomfort, the moment they realized that doing nothing was also a choice. And sometimes she thought about the cowboy. She did not know where he went or what roads he traveled next. But she carried his lesson with her. That courage did not need to be loud. That kindness could stand firm without anger. That one person stepping forward could change the direction of a life. One evening, as she watched the sun set beyond the fields, she understood something clearly. Her story did not end at the market. That place was not her identity. It was only a turning point. She breathed deeply, feeling the ground beneath her feet, the sky above her head. She was free. And somewhere far away, a lone cowboy continued down another road, unaware that his single decision had not only saved one life, but had also planted a quiet seed of courage in many others. The world had not changed completely. It never does in one day. But for her and for those who had watched, something important had shifted. Silence had been broken, and that mattered.